Welcome back to another in our series of great chapters in the Bible. Our chapter today comes from the Old Testament book of 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter 19. Elijah flees for his life. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid, and he rose and ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he asked that he might die, saying, "It is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." And he lay down and slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. And he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." And he rose and ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. There he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. And he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, "I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away." And he said, "Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains, and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He said, "I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away." And the Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu the son of Nimshi you shall anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah you shall anoint to be prophet in your place. And the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael shall Jehu put to death. And the one who escapes from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him." So he departed from there, and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him. And he was with the 12. Elijah passed by him and cast his cloak upon him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, "Let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you." And he said to him, "Go back again, for what have I done to you?" And he returned from following him, and took the yoke of oxen, and sacrificed them, and boiled their flesh with the yokes of the oxen, and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and went after Elijah, and assisted him. All phobias are fears, but not all fears are phobias. What's the difference between a fear and a phobia? Well, generally speaking, a fear is a normal reaction to a situation or event. A phobia causes one to make irrational decisions because of a fear. For instance, Bob gets nervous every time he flies. In that case, Bob is like many people. However, Bill won't go to Hawaii for his sister's wedding because he will have to fly to get there. Or consider Phyllis. Phyllis has a fear of heights. She gets scared and closes her eyes at the top when she rides a Ferris wheel at the county fair. Jean is also afraid of heights. Jean turned down a good job with great benefits because she would have to work on the 25th floor of a skyscraper. Does that help? Now, to be clear, both the person with the fear and that of the phobia believe they have perfectly rational reasons for their fears. However, when that perfectly rational reasoning isn't rational by normal standards, then we might have a problem. There are an awful lot of phobias out there. Many bring on panic attacks and fall into those social anxiety disorders categories. I would not think to tell that person that they are unreasonable or silly for believing such things. It's obviously real to them. That's for them to work through, and I don't want to be judgmental on such things. When I read our chapter today, I am puzzled by Elijah's actions, and I do get more than a little judgmental towards his behavior. Just like that phobia, I can't understand. I don't see his behavior as rational. But that's my problem. To Elijah, his running from Jezebel was a reasonable route. And that's where God encounters Elijah. And maybe that's where God encounters all of us, there on our rationalized roads. Elijah gets his orders from God in chapter 18 to end the 3.5-year drought. James, in his letter in the New Testament, lauds Elijah for his faith in ending this drought. We read in James chapter 5, verses 17 through 18, Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed fervently that it might not rain. And for 3 years and 6 months it did not rain on the earth. Then he prayed again, and heaven gave rain, and the earth bore its fruit. In between the order to end the drought and the rainstorm that came, Elijah deals with 850 prophets of Baal and Asherah by having them slaughtered. So far, so good. Then Elijah prays for rain, and a torrential downpour deluges the land. Elijah races ahead of Ahab on the way back to the palace, a mere 12-mile run, and Elijah outruns a chariot from Mount Carmel to Jezreel and waits at the gate of the city. It is there that Jezebel hears about what Elijah the prophet has done from Ahab and immediately sends a message to Elijah and promises his life will be like theirs by the next day. What happens next has confounded scholars and commentators. 95 miles. That's about how far Elijah runs for his life. From Jezreel to Beersheba, he runs with a servant. But surely if Elijah had only feared Jezebel, he needed only leave the northern kingdom of Israel and slip into Judah, where he would have been afforded the protection of Jehoshaphat. That would be rational and reasonable. Maybe there is more to what James tells us than we allow. For James says in James 5:17, the first part, Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. For that's really what Elijah says when he says in verse 4 of our chapter today, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." Then comes sleep, the solace of the fatigued mind. Twice awoken by an angel to bid him to eat. But what the angel tells him next might well be what we write on a sticky note and post it in visible places for us to see during our day. Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. I don't know what it was in that food and drink, but it kept him going for 40 days as he journeys back to the same mountain that challenged Moses centuries before when he received the law from God. But unlike that time when Moses met God, he would not be found in earthquakes and fire and wind, such as what Israel had seen in those days. But, like Moses, Elijah would find a God who condescends to meet him, not in terror-stricken form, but in human-like compassion of a whisper. This scene is so surreal, so beyond our ability to comprehend its true thrust. But I wonder if, in our times of fears and doubts and darkness of soul, we might visit this place and listen to the words spoken to Elijah. What are you doing here? For those who read chastisement and rebuke in this twice spoken phrase, I suppose perhaps you might not be where Elijah has been. But for those who have been there, you will hear that whisper that is beckoning you back from the wilderness where you have been alone and tells you that there is work to do now. It sounds a lot like what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Isn't that what we all need? I can relate to that Elijah who has a nature like mine. Can't you? And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow and look at another of the great chapters of the Bible.